First conversation today, and we'll be heading to Abuja for that conversation. But before we get to that conversation, let's tell you that in what appears to be a strong rebuttal to widespread rumors of his resignation, the Group Chief Executive Officer of the Nigerian National Petroleum Company Limited, Mr. Bashir Ojulari, was seen earlier this week delivering a speech at the Society of Petroleum Engineers Conference in Lagos. Now, his presence at this high-level industry event, where he addressed stakeholders on energy reforms and investment priorities, served as a public and visual dismissal of the resignation claims that have dominated the media space. My colleague Helen Osamide-Ekins has this report.
In the global energy landscape, we find ourselves at a critical inflection point.
Mr. Ojulari's appearance at the SPE conference comes amid unconfirmed reports suggesting he had either voluntarily resigned or was compelled to do so by security agencies.
Our collective innovation and our shared responsibility.
The rumors, which gained significant traction on social media over the weekend, sparked confusion and anxiety across the oil and gas industry. While the presidency has privately dismissed the reports as false, no official statements have been issued by either the presidency or NNPCL Limited, deepening public curiosity and industry uncertainty. Mr. Bashir Ojulari, a seasoned oil and gas executive and former managing director of Shell Nigerian Exploration and Production Company, was appointed by President Bola Tinubu on April 2, 2025. His appointment was part of broader efforts to overhaul the leadership of the National Oil Company in line with the Petroleum Industry Acts. The sudden emergence of the resignation narrative has pushed the NNPCL boss into the spotlight, raising questions about the motives behind the rumors and the silence from official quarters.
With his active participation at today's conference, many observers believe the speculation may be politically motivated or simply unfounded. For now, Bashir Ojulari remains firmly at the helm of NNPCL Limited. Helen Osamide-Ekins, TVC News, Abuja.
All right, joining me now from our Abuja studios is Professor Emeritus in Petroleum Economics, Emmanuel Goga Foundation, Abuja, Professor Omoumi Iledare. Good afternoon, Prof. It's good to have you join the show. Thank you so much. Prof, I think we will start this conversation with what this really means for Nigeria's oil and gas industry. For me, I'm worried that a sector that is gradually, should I say, gaining traction, confidence back, some level of investment and all of that. Now we are where we are with the issue, and the silence also is something that worries me. Now, without no political tone under this, I just like you to make us understand what this means for Nigeria's oil and gas industry. Let me say Nigeria's struggling oil and gas industry.
Is what I call the legal versus administrative. Second is what I call the implications of political interference. And third is what I call posterity versus personality. Let's look at the legal and administrative. Yes, the PIA on governance has three institutions. One, the regulatory institution. Two, the commercial institution. And three, the policy institution. One of the key aspects of the PIA and objective is to remove political interference. I'm not surprised that the presidency is careful not to issue a statement. One, because that would be political interference from a public liability company. So I commend the president for keeping silence. Second, it is a legal matter because NNPC Limited today, irrespective of what the populace think, and I can understand they've not changed their mindset as to what is NNPC Limited compared to NNPC. So from an administrative point of view, the president is indirectly surrendering the power to govern NNPC Limited to the board of directors. That's what ought to be, and is commended for that. Secondly, I will speak to the implication of public interference in the governance of NNPC Limited through the pages of the newspaper. Now, you can't stop that because you have interest. But listen, constant public diminishing of the authority embedded in the NNPC board of directors, as if they are the board of directors, have significant implications because you want investors to come, and you are more or less diminishing the authority of the board of directors and even the appointed GCO, and that's scary. And finally, the third portion is posterity versus personality. The Petroleum Industry Act is designed to emphasize institutional power and not personal power. It is difficult for the system to understand that. And so we need to be patient until the mindset of the society is changed. We'll continue to see what we saw over this weekend, and we're not even out of it yet. And finally, the difference between personality-driven power and institutional power is sustainability, transferability, and making sure that the intergenerational aspect that the PIA so emphasized comes to bear. We must be patient. We're only 4 years along the road. Changing an old habit is very difficult. That's with respect to the saga that we are still going through. It's not over yet.
It's not over.
But I would really like the presidency not to interfere.
You would like the presidency not to interfere. So where we stand with regards to talking about what it means for the industry in its totality, investment-wise, talking about investors, do you think that this might show a bit of uncertainty in one way or the other? Because Mr. Ojulari just came in a few months ago. He's been dotting some I's and crossing some T's. When investors see such uncertainty, maybe he's going to stay, maybe he's not going to stay, do you think that could affect anything? Just clearly, I just want objectively. And the PIA that you've mentioned. We discussed this the last time you came on, Prof. The issue of revisiting the PIA. And that, to me, or to many, speaks to the fact that we might not be implementing it to the latter. How does all of this come to you?
Thank you again for the question. It's about optics. I'm sure you're familiar with what we call the invisible markets, the invisible ants in the market. So if you look at the investment market and dynamics, you have things that you can really not see, feel, or touch. And that's the invisibility of the concept of demand and supply. Optics become an important thing. Apart from the Ojulari saga, which we are going through now, there are other things that the market is looking at with respect to whether Nigeria is the optimal destination for the few dollars available for fossil fuel development. The issue with Nigeria really is governance. And that's what we see playing out. Because most of the times in Nigeria, including the oil and gas sector, they seem to be governed. Governance is personality-driven, which is wrong. And that's why we have not seen sustainability in the investment flow. sort of not repeating myself, it took us 20 years to move from Petroleum Industry Act to Petroleum Industry, to move from Petroleum Act of 1969 to Petroleum Industry Act of 2021. I've said it over and over again. We are just about 4 years, and people are still positioning themselves. And I'm sorry to say, not for service, but for reward. And so when you have a leader with a transformational mindset, leadership mindset, who is thinking of servicing the nation, it's not something that is common. If all of this settles, that will give us, more or less, we have now been tested and passed. 4 years is too early to evaluate what took you 20 years to change. Let us patiently continue to implement. But we must remember the key 4 interested drivers of the PIA for delivery. 1 is efficiency, doing things right. 2 is effectiveness, doing the right thing. 3 is ethics, being professionally ethical. And 4 is equity, being fair, either in the bidding process, in the appointment process, and in the reward process. The PIA was designed to promote these 4 important drivers. Fortunately, everybody seems to understand the objective of the PIA. What is lacking right now is the mindset to develop the process in such a way that the objective is accomplished. And this is where leadership comes in, and the attitude of the leaders in this sector. I'm not really worried. Because right now, if you look at the oil and gas industry in Nigeria, it's dominated literally by indigenous companies. In terms of the volume, in terms of the reserves, the international companies are in the deep water. And the proportion of that deep water asset compared to the onshore and shallow water asset is small. And you have how many of them competing for that small portion? But for the onshore and shallow water, is where you still have to focus on. And I've just spoken for the entire day, since the other day, to the ministry, administrators, and professionals. It is about policy development, policy formulation, and policy evaluation. And if we continue to do that, 4 years is too early to abandon what took us 20 years to develop. I still believe we're on the right track. When all of this plays out and we begin to have leadership with service-minded intention, we'll be all right. It is when we begin to allow politics to delimit the ability of PIA to deliver that will be a problem. And I'll continue to encourage the president, but he must do the right thing. Don't selectively implement the PIA provisions.
Okay, Prof, let's now look at the refinery, which was one of the comments from Mr. Ojulari before this saga came up, where he says the NNPC is ruling out selling Port Harcourt refinery. We've had this discussion too, I know, before now, where some say there should be a private involvement in running those refineries. Some say no, they don't agree, they are old, they should be sold. I've also had the argument where someone even says, in the United States, we have refineries that are far older than that and are still very functional. I know you can educate us about this. What do you think? What's the way to go with regards to the state of our refinery? Obviously, Port Harcourt is not doing as well as it should do, despite the $1.5 billion from AFDB that was invested in that facility.
I can identify with the Nigerian publics because the evidence is there that something has gone wrong with the Nigerian refineries. But I want us to come to terms with certain facts. I would like to continue to emphasize that the truth and fact, a truth and a fact are not synonymous. Most of the time, the truth is in the eye of the beholder, whereas facts are verifiable. Yes, the refineries are Nigerian assets. They are owned by the Federation. And NNPC Limited, as of now, is holding it in trust for them. So basically, because of PIA, they are the one with the right to make the right decisions. And we need to trust them. We need to trust them. In fact, I think one of my students wanted to debate me because he thinks that they need to sell the refinery. And I think it's not about sell or not sell. You have to find out, is there a possibility? Everything you've spent on those refineries are sunk cost. They can only be recovered if you produce something out of it. You must believe in the professional thinking of the board of directors. They are competent people to decide what they want to do with this asset that by law has been given to them to manage. It's not a political asset. And you cannot use political leanings on preference to decide what you do. They are economic assets that only the board of directors can decide to sell or not sell. Having said that, that's why, again, you need to go back to those 4 important drivers of decision-making process: efficiency, effectiveness, ethics, and equity. And again, I want to believe that a transformational leader will not make decisions based on sentiment, especially when you are entrusted with an asset that is expected to add value. This is my take. My take is not about whether to sell or not sell, because I believed that with proper refurbishment and restructuring of the refineries, it is possible for them to deliver value, if allowed. Because we have an example, the LMA petrochemical industry, chemical industry, was considered dead and useless. But with operational efficiency as goal, utilization rate pursued, and competent workforce entrenched, the petrochemical refinery today is adding value. And so there are models that NNPC Limited can adopt. They can have private-public partnership. They can even have a contractual agreement, and they can have a joint venture arrangement, or they can abandon it. Those are decision-making process based on what I call fundamentals of petroleum economics. And I'm sure at the end, if they live up to the expectations of some of us who have known them for many years, I want to believe they will make the right decision.
I like that. They will make the right decision. Well, let's wrap this up now, Prof. There is never enough time to talk about the industry. But before I let you go, Prof, we are already in the month of August, and it's almost getting to the more than half of the year is gone. Production seems to be doing better. We heard the NUPRC talking about over 1.7 million barrels per day. And projections are still there. Maybe we could hit 2 million. But mine is just, what do you make of the entire sector? What are your projections, considering global issues and also our own local domestic issues? What's your outlook for the oil and gas industry?
Honestly, I think Nigeria, with 37 billion barrels reserves, this is not 2P with 50% of recovery. This is actually 90% chance of recoverability with current economics technology, and other conditions. So it's not that we don't have reserve to produce. Neither is it that we don't have market to produce it. What we lack right now, in my opinion, is governance structure. That will govern the oil and gas sector in Nigeria with little political interference. We have the reserves, we have the competency. Even if you don't want to believe it, Nigerian engineers are competent. They are, if you let them do their work, and you become less political. Even in the engagement of competent workforce, 2 million barrels per day is not a big deal for a 37 billion barrel reserves in place. What you need is a good governance. The Achilles heel of Nigeria's inability to produce 2 million barrels per day is weak governance of the sector. And you have weak governance in the oil and gas sector in Nigeria because most appointments are based on reward rather than service. Even within the sector itself, and even within the private sector. And if we are able to improve the governance structure, we'll make it. And finally, if I can make my final comment, because I know you're out of time.
No, go ahead, Prof. Go ahead.
My concern is not knowing the difference between institutional power in the sector and personal power. I want to say it, and I'm subject to being corrected. The word minister in the Petroleum Industry Act is not an individual. The word minister is an institution. And I can't stand a minister of petroleum resources that is not engaging the Ministry of Petroleum Resources. Because that's his base. That's his base. For sustainability and effectiveness of PIA implementation, the Ministry of Petroleum Resources must be engaged. The professional there must participate in the policy formulation, policy development, and policy evaluation. Otherwise, all of these things we are doing on these 4 years, if we do not have a custodian properly engaged, we are just going to continue to reinvent the wheel. Again, this is Professor Emeritus' opinion. I don't represent anyone. Anything I say on your TV is my personal perspective. But I've invested to be able to say this for posterity. And I hope posterity will judge me right, that I try to educate the public on this oil and gas sector. Governance is the #1 weakness of the oil and gas industry in Nigeria, and that's why they are not like Saudi Aramco, that's why they are not like Kuwait, they are not like Malaysia, that's why they are not like Indonesia. We have a governance structure that must be corrected, and that was the essence of PIA. Implement it fully, and there will be no reason why we cannot produce 3 million barrels per day. Thank you for having me.
Professor Omowumi Iledare, Professor Emeritus in Petroleum Economics, Emmanuel Egboga Foundation, Abuja. Thank you so very much. It's always good to have you on the program. Enjoy the rest of your day, Prof.
Always my pleasure. See you.
All right, then. Well, still to come on the show, we're still staying around the energy space, but electricity supply in Nigeria, development, challenges, and prospects. Of course, there are efforts of government. Research lead Nigeria